Welcome to Hosbrutality. My name is Stefan Zernecki of Black Tie Tours. With me, as always, local artist Cole Rogers, Wesley Jones of Tour Cascadia. And we are joined today by a native McMinnville-onianite, whatever, a pig farmer,
wannabe,
veteran public school teacher, an artist, and the other job, owner, winemaker, vineyard manager, ceramicist at Beckham Estate Vineyard, Andrew Beckham.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for the introduction.
Thank you. Thanks for having us up. We are in the winery, officially, right? This is the winery?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are many outbuildings, and I'm very jealous of your outbuildings, so I just need to make sure we're clear on that. Okay, before we get started, what are we drinking?
What do we have?
We've got two wines in the glass right now. We've got our 2018 Beckham Estate Pinot Noir that's in front.
Okay.
And in the rear is our 2018 Estate Creta. So the first wine is made in traditional fashion, aged in French oak. The second wine is made entirely in clay amphora and terracotta vessels.
Okay, including fermentation.
Including fermentation and aging and
Gotcha.
élevage.
Wow. Very cool. Well, we're going to get all into the clay stuff. Pots real soon here. So I know the story a little bit. You started working with the amphora pots after you saw an article in a magazine, right? You were reading about, and basically you looked at it. Hey, I'm a ceramicist. I could do that. And then the rest is history, essentially. And so you started making the pots. It got more kind of developed. But did you really have a lot of experience with like large vessels, making things that big beforehand?
Well, it started when I was in college. I was trying to push scale and scope of the work I was making, and I really infuriated most of my classmates as I would consume the entire kiln with a single vessel, typically right before the end of the semester.
Yeah. This was at Linfield, right?
This was at Lewis and Clark, where I
Lewis and
majored
Clark.
in
I see.
ceramics and history. So my interest and obsession with building things bigger started as a college student. And I continued scaling things up as I was trying to make a living as a pseudo-professional artist.
Gotcha.
And then when my wife showed me an article on Floridori and her use of amphora, I really was able to put those skills to some kind of practical use. Things prior to that had all been aesthetic art pieces, and I really resisted functional work. And now I had a reason and intention to make things that were functional.
Now, for reference, was that article before or after you started making wine?
So we moved to the country here in 2004 to build a pottery studio in the woods. There were no vines here. It was nothing but a little house in a sea of trees. So we got really sidetracked. The studio took 10 years to build, but along the way we cleared the land and started growing wine grapes and making wine.
Wow. Because you had a neighbor across the road
did,
or whatever.
yeah.
And
Which is
like,
now K&M Winery. When we moved here, it was owned by Fred and Jill Newton, who were in their early 80s. And Fred was an educator in his prior life, and we had a lot to talk about. And I helped him prune his vineyard the first January we were out here, and that's how it all started, with a truckload of cuttings.
Okay, so you started with a lot of pruning, and you didn't just quit at pruning in January, and you weren't just like, I'm done. I'm just good at drinking wine. I'm not going to make it any.
I had the easy out. Fred, of course, had to continue with the project, and for me, it was day by day when I wanted to or had time to go and help. Yeah.
True.
A little different than the responsibility that he bore.
But then you went down that road.
We did.
You got the cuttings, and you started clearing, and
Right. Yep. We started with 8.5 acres, and we planted that out in 2008. And then we were able to acquire an additional 20 acres in 2013. We cleared that land again. It was all in timber, and have about 10 acres of that planted, and are now in the midst of planting another piece to the north of us. So 36 acres in total. We'll have 20 under vine in the next few weeks.
I'm hearing a lot of we. Is that
We.
is that an entire crew that's taking a forester pride, or is that you and your wife on a backhoe?
All of the heavy equipment work has been done by myself. When Andrea and I were younger, before we had kids and so many obligations, we did a lot of the propagation and planning and maintenance. But at this point, there's enough here. I have help.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm spread, between teaching, trying to manage the vineyard, making the wine, and then also running the ceramic business. So help is necessary.
You're spread pretty thin already, to say the least.
So
That's incredible.
on a normal year, how much wine are you making?
We are typically producing about 3,000 cases a year.
Wow.
We should be at around 5,000 cases a year when the other vines that we have in are in production. However, 2020 was a hard year for us, like many others. We just made about 350 cases of wine, most of it white. Yeah. We have one red wine that we produce for 2020.
2020. Yeah.
Oof. Now, do you have just a giant wheel and a custom kiln? How are you getting these giant things made?
Well, they are big. We're looking at a 320 liter vessel here that's made with about 550 pounds of wet clay. Oh. And then the one in back, it's what we call the Novum XL. It's all in Roman numerals and referencing Latin, but we've got an American T-shirt size, which is kind of a little bit stupid, but kind of fun at the same time. So that vessel is made with 950 pounds of wet clay. It fires to about 550 pounds, so it loses 400 pounds of water weight in the drying and firing process. And the studio that we have to build these vessels has been designed as this purpose is in mind. So we have an overhead gantry to move the vessels around and forklifts and a gigantic shuttle kiln.
An overhead gantry?
Gantry, yeah. A crane that flies overhead.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. So we've had to create a facility that will accommodate these large vessels. And each time we move to a larger scale, we run into roadblocks that we a lot of times hadn't considered. So everything's done with heavy equipment.
I'm curious. Sorry, if you make functional art, obviously, but have you ever strayed into creative with the amphoras as far as like painting or different types of glazes or something like that you do with them?
So I've worked really hard to develop the clay chemistry and the firing profile so that we can use the vessels without any lining or the addition of wax or glaze. And to achieve this has been incredibly complicated.
Wow.
We're working now with the 5th iteration of the clay body. The firing, because this particular clay has a lot of silica in it, is very long, and most of it's controlled cooling. So the firings are 115 hours. And the window for success versus failure with these vessels is just 3 degrees Celsius. We fire 3 degrees hotter than this, and they're vitreous. They don't breathe. We don't get any of the exchange of atmosphere and wine within. The microflora won't live in the containers. So all of those benefits that we get from the porosity don't exist if we fire too hot. We go 3 degrees cooler than this, and they leak and weep. And they're a hygienic problem and more than that. So it's been a monumental effort to get the chemistry and the profile correct. And I often have people ask me, well, what temperature do you fire to? And it's much deeper than that. It really has more to do with time than actual temperature. It's time and temperature and heat work.
Wow.
So in the amphora that I've had experience with in the past was under fired. I was so shocked to watch you come in, and it's just sweating like beads of wine out the side, just little bits. By the time you're done, it has this little almost like you left your really cold drink outside on a hot summer day, but it's wine that's leaked through because it's super porous.
Yes.
In nature.
Yep. And so that's what we've had to work to overcome, is to make sure that the containers are performing the way that they should. And so we check all of this using an extensive methodology with our quality control. We look at the saturation rates after we fire the vessels. We do a 9-hour boil down with water, and we see how much water is absorbed into the clay. Mm-hmm. We do this based on weight, pre and post boil down. We use temp checks, which measure time and temperature. They get graphed into a software program that are showing us the actual heat work in the kiln in 19 different locations inside the kiln. We look at evaporation using sensors to check how much contents evaporate over time. Yeah, so there's a lot involved in making sure we have the parameters set just as they have to be.
Wow. Now with the heat and the glaze that you were talking about,
glaze.
No glaze.
No
Because
glaze.
you've got
Lack of
the
glaze.
thank you,
Lack of
lack
glaze.
of glaze.
Glazeless.
This is why I
asked
keep you
this
guys
question
around.
mostly, yeah.
Right, yeah. How porous is the inside still? Do you have to worry about when it comes to cleaning like a bacterial presence within the walls, or is it, with it being still a little bit breathable, how difficult is it to clean out the inside of one of these vessels year over year?
Okay, yeah. So we can measure the oxygen content in the wine using a DO meter,
Okay.
which we do, and we often look at what the DO is in the container versus a barrel. So we have kind of a standard and a baseline. As far as care and cleaning and hygiene goes, they are incredibly durable. In fact, we treat them like we treat a barrel or another winemaking container. We use a high pressure barrel washer with 300-degree water or steam to clean them. So the way that I've designed them, the stainless steel closure mechanism is all external. So there's no jeopardy of the steel expanding and the vessel cracking with hot water. What's very important is that you get them dry before you put them to bed. So we often use box fans on them to make sure they're really dried out inside, or we just push a lot of air in the cellar. It's important that they're dry before they go to bed.
Did you create the stainless steel closing mechanism?
Yeah. And the crushed gasket, we have a die that I've made that we use to have those injection molded so that we have FDA wine contact approved material. The steel, I've tried to keep everything as local as I can. The steel is fabricated at Newburgh Steel by a really marvelous craftsman, Rocco. His work is impeccable. So we have the fabrication of the steel done locally. The clay is batched and blended in Portland. We have an Oregon artist who blows the glass firm locks, the Da Vinci locks that are on top of the vessels. The gaskets are made in Beaverton. Wow. My employees are former Beaverton High School students.
That's the best.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, so local, I've tried to keep everything close to
No
home.
doubt.
And they have a beautiful imprint on the outside. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, yeah. It's the rule of thirds, really, and ratios and proportions are really important with the way these vessels work. The kinetic energy that's captured in them is expressed because of the width versus the height, the pointed bottom, the shoulder. So all of these things relate to the division of space, Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, and really it's expressed in the energy and the kinetic movement that we see in the containers during ferment and beyond.
That's beautiful. Man.
So, quick and dirty explanation. Why would a winemaker want to use an amphora to
Sure.
make their wine?
Okay, so for me, the most intriguing thing, really the catalyst behind using them, is to get to purity of place and site.
Okay.
And so with our winemaking, we are farming for style. We don't add any product to the wine. We don't adjust the chemistry. We add sulfur at bottle. So we're really focused on farming for acidity. Okay. And the amphora, I think, are a great method to achieve the showcase of the place because we don't have any external input influencing the wine. There isn't oak tannin. There isn't the unfermentable sugars from oak tannin that sweeten the palate. You do get a very interesting and definable texture in the mouth that I relate to putting your tongue on a wet stone or a brick. It's certainly got a mineral sort of essence to it. So the amphora build body and texture in the mouth, but they don't add a flavor or impart anything that distracts from the place. So for me, it really comes down to purity.
Purity of the expression of the terroir. Yeah.
So the two wines, maybe I'll mention these since they're in our glasses now.
Please do.
The first wine is our estate Pinot. It's made with 4 different clones of Pinot we grow here. It really kind of shows our place, and it's made with native yeasts. We add about 25 or 30 parts of sulfur at bottle. We, on this particular site, because we're shallow volcanic soils, have a lot of red fruit in our wines. And for me, this wine shows with a lot of red fresh strawberry, red raspberry, red cherry. And you do get some sweetness from the neutral oak, but the oak profile is very neutral. The wine that's its sister or counterpart is the same vintage, 2018 Creta meaning clay in Latin. And this wine is picked with the same parameters. Actually, the fruit comes in the same day, same proportions. And what we get is a wine that's markedly different than the estate. It has more of a dried fruit character. I think for me, we get a little more like density of flavor and concentration. So these red fruits are more like dried fruit leather, dried strawberry, dried raspberry, dried cherry. There's definitely this texture and feel in the mouth that's different than the estate. It's chewy. It's dusty on the palate. We also, with these wines made in amphora, see less turbidity. We see wines, because of the contact with clay, its negative ionic charge is working like bentonite. So the amphora are actually clarifying the wines. And the wines made in clay also tend to have a little less color and less alcohol as they perspire and wick some of those sugars through in the early part of ferment.
Oh, interesting.
What have you seen, maybe in other wines that you've made or tasted from other producers in amphora? Is there a marked difference in ageability once it's in bottle?
Super question. So our thought on the ageability of these wines is that because the wine has more exposure to oxygen in the front end of its evolution, once the wines go to bottle, they're incredibly sound. And from our experience, when we open wines made in wood and wines made in clay, the wines made in clay, the terracotta contact wines, tend to last longer in bottle. So on top of that, our wines are very low in alcohol and have good tannin and have a lot of acidity. So they have age-worthy components. But we really find that the wines made in clay are very long-lived. And interestingly, if we have a chance to taste some of the 19s, they're cohesive early in their evolution. So we typically bottle wines from amphora pre-vintage, so like 8 to 9 months, sometimes 10 months, with contact in the clay, and they've come together earlier in their life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very neat.
So when you mention, or anybody in the Valley mentions amphora, bam, we think of you guys. You're kind of the Willamette Valley experts on amphora and making wine in them. Are you as big a deal as I feel like you are? Do you ever feel like a fraud? Like, I am a speck, I am nothing, but you give me all this attention.
No, fair enough. I think that's a totally valid question. And it's actually something that I have thought a lot about as we've ventured through this project and this process. So when I started making the vessels initially in 2013, I was doing this all in a vacuum. I had no one to ask. I had no one to call up and say, well, what do you do when you see this happen? And so I was exploring different shapes and looking at different cultures and regions in the world where people make amphora or terracotta vessels, as the nomenclature is a little difficult here. In the Black Sea region, they're called cuevri. In Spain and Portugal, they're talia or tinaja. The Etruscans would have called them dolium. An amphora is none of these things. An amphora is a pointed vessel smaller than 40 gallons with hooked handles used for transporting wines, not making or aging wines. So I looked at these regions in the world and what people were doing and thought about intention and outcome and varietals they were making and made these different shapes, and then worked on clay chemistry. We worked with clays from the Sacramento Delta in the beginning that were very easy to fire, and then they had too much imprint on the wine, so we started working with clays from the Southeast United States. And ultimately, when I created the brand Novum that we use to identify these vessels that I'm producing for winemakers, brewers, cider makers, distillers, mead makers even. I've just sold some to a mead maker in Delaware.
Wow.
Why not?
I wanted to be authentic, and I wanted to be genuine. And so Novum means a new beginning in Latin. And of great concern was being authentic with this project and not wanting to be a fraud or fraudulent about it. So we branded the project a new beginning in Latin. It's a synthesis of shapes that I've seen, that I've explored and developed. And having figured this out in a vacuum in Oregon on my own, I do feel like I have a certain degree of expertise in the field. I am not PhD trained in clay chemistry or material science, but I've had to learn a lot to make this work.
No doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Functional PhD.
yeah.
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 It makes a little money too. Yeah, I just know as a teacher, I felt like a fraud pretty much every day, and as a mushroom truffle expert, whatever, feel like God, there are these people, there are these like gods, that you kind of look up to in your field, and I always feel like, when the lights are on, it's like I'm nothing,
Yeah.
So
Imposter
totally, yeah, the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So switching gears just a little bit, you are still teaching full time,
Well, yeah, I've tried.
essentially.
Boy, this has been an incredibly challenging year. I've been teaching ceramics for 21 years in the same classroom.
Yeah.
And
amazing.
with COVID and the demographic at our school, it's been a huge challenge. And it's really been hard to pull satisfaction out of my days. I've gone weeks at a time where I've talked to a black screen without a single student turning their camera on or saying something in the chat or even acknowledging that I'm there professing to a black hole. And, that's hard as a veteran teacher and someone who knows, I know I can be quite effective in the classroom.
Yeah.
I feel absolutely ineffective and useless as a Zoom pottery teacher. Being that the kids even have the materials at home, there's been a lot of effort invested into making sure they had the opportunity. But, really what it looks like to me is I'm grading privilege. And it's the white kids that have a place to make the work and a parent that can drive them to the school to have the work fired. And it's so much about privilege and really not about equity and inclusion. And so that's been one of the hardest things for me to swallow.
Yeah, the demographic you're teaching and the place you're in is just upper middle class area.
But those kids are being left behind though that don't have those advantages.
Yeah. Well, when I started at Beaverton High, we were the APIB magnet for the district, and we're 15% homeless now, and 70% free and reduced lunch. So over the 20 years I've been there, the students have changed a lot.
Yeah.
And this just isn't a subject that I think works well on the Zoom platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so experiential. People need to
Absolutely.
learn collectively and fail together.
But it's always blown me away, though. I mean, I've been bringing people here for quite a few years now, and one of the things I always talk about on the way over is like, oh my God, Andrew teaches full time. He is the winemaker. He makes the pots, is in charge of the vineyard, and at the same time still has to be a papa and hopefully still a good husband and, manage all these things,
That's debatable.
I said it last, but, it was like, oh, right, I still need to make my wife happy and fulfilled and everything. But shut up, Ian. But I guess what's the trick? Like, over the years, what have you kind of learned? What are the tips? What are those signals like, oh, shit, I need to focus over here now? Any tips there or ideas?
Well, nothing here is finished. I'm the king of a million projects with no completion. So I think as of late,
Nice to know.
I feel so good.
Yeah.
as of,
Yeah, you've
Look, I
accomplished
see a
so
lot of
much.
finished projects, but I mean, whatever.
and this has been hard for me because I've always been someone who wanted to do it all on my own. And there's just too much to do now. I can't. So I've had to really start to lean on people that I can trust and depend on to represent us, to do the quality job that we need done, so that I have time. And that's been hard to give up the ownership of these things that I was intimately a part of and still am. But I've had to delegate, I think is the way.
Do you have to go find those people or have they found you?
It's been a bit of both.
Yeah.
And it's also been, long-term relationships that are important. So Gonzalo, our foreman, he's been here for 17 years working with us. And Nathan Paddock, who works with me forming the amphora, was a student of mine at Beaverton in 2000, the first year I taught. And so we, it's been a combination of people coming here and also me recruiting.
Yeah.
The young boy who works for us now is a junior at the high school, and I knew when I had him the first week in class, like I needed him as an employee, and I bugged him for a year and a half to get his license. And when he turned 16, he came here and started working the next week.
That is awesome.
I just hired my first former student as a driver this year for this summer. Like I finally achieved that level. I'm so excited.
Well, we're getting old, though. Is the really
Like, wait, what? You're how old? Yeah. Okay, let's take a little break, get a little bit more wine, and we'll wrap up our section and then move on to our
What everyone's been waiting for.
the other bullshit that people
Yeah.
apparently listen to.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. You have poured us more wine. Please tell us what you poured.
Okay, super. So I've got a couple wines in front of you now. I have our 2018 Pinot Gris that is 9 months on the skins in amphora. So very extended maceration. And for me, this wine really, it's really like an autumn sort of harvest wine that you would maybe see in a cornucopia. It smells of apricot and exotic tropical fruits and of wet leaves and wet apples and mossy forest floor.
Yep.
It's quite very different than white Pinot Gris.
Wow.
And a big reason that this wine works is because of the shape of the container. When we go through primary and then finally through malic, at that point the skins are pretty degraded, and what we find is that the seeds fall to the bottom of the amphora, to the bottom of the cone, and the skins and leaves form a protective layer on top of the seeds. So all of the astringent seeds and the potential extraction of astringent tannins from the seeds are compacted and encased in the bottom of the container. So we're getting the benefit of the contents producing natural sulfites, keeping the wine fresh, but we're not extracting the astringent tannins that we don't want. So the really fun wine. This wine takes a lot of courage to make. As about midway through its process, it's incredibly bitter and brown and pretty scary. So you have to just be
Nerve-wracking.
patient, and ride the wave.
Believe in science.
So this is fun. We've been making this since 2013. These really long macerated Pinot Gris. And then the second wine I poured is a 2019 Trousseau Noir. And this is a really fun project for us. After my wife and I, Andrea, visited the Jura in 2015, we were determined to grow Jura varietals in Oregon. And so we took several years to find the budwood and vinified our first Trousseau in 2019. This particular version is 100% destemmed and very unlike making red wines that we typically grow in the valley. This is a highly tannic grape. The skins are highly tannic. So we press at 7 or 8 days into fermentation, really thinking about tannin control and tannin management. So here, like kind of some funky, spicy sort of little feral sort of funkiness to it, like kind of sour cherries and mossy forest floor again. So really super exciting for us to have a red varietal that's not Pinot Noir that we can make in the valley.
Yeah.
And along with the Trousseau, we've got a planting of Sauvignon, which is the indigenous white varietal that's grown in the Jura that's going in this spring.
Stefan, correct me if I'm wrong. Haven't tasted anything like these in the valley.
You're 100% correct. There's other skin contact Pinot Gris, but it doesn't taste like that.
Nothing like this. If you were to blind taste me on this, I would be so confused.
Be so hard because, like you said, it doesn't have that like bitterness, but there's kind of an astringency to other skin contact Pinot Noirs that have really turned me off.
The Gris.
Sorry, Pinot Gris. Yes, and this is not. It's just so much more pleasant.
Well, it's not your typical green nose by any means.
Yeah,
That's the most.
and this is
Crazy
just straight
thing to me.
fun. This is pure fun in the glass.
It's so
It's
exciting
Trousseau.
to finally get to this point where
Yeah.
we can share it with
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
It's so delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
Loving it. Loving
this
it.
is beautiful.
A food-worthy wine that's like a soft, easy drinking red.
Yeah.
But it would hold up to like a big meal, like a fatty steak
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah. I put it somewhere between Cab Franc and Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
There's
That's
like
good.
kind
Yeah,
of
I
an
know what you
herbaceous
mean.
Right.
Yeah.
sort of pepper sort of quality to it.
That spice that you
Spice.
talked about, though, the spice is what stood out to me.
I get a
Yeah.
little bubble gum on it that I like. You know. It's
Oh
fun.
my goodness. Okay, I'm
Nerd-
nerding
nerd
out.
out, Wesley.
Stefan wants me to hurry up so we can get to other fun stuff, but I'm gonna nerd out.
Do it.
Now, when it comes to oak barrels, we talk a lot about the difference in the size of the barrel, implementing more or less of that oak profile. When we're talking about the different size pots, amphoras that you're using, does it change the outcome of the texture, the aromas, the flavors, or is it universal and you're just being able to ferment a larger amount of juice at one time?
No, the smaller the vessel, the greater the contact with surface area, the more impact you get. However, the vessels, like we mentioned earlier on, are very neutral.
Yeah.
So what we're getting is not anything like a brand new oak barrel.
Right.
It's even though it's maybe a brand new, smaller of the two amphora, it's still very nuanced in what it has to offer the wine. What's quite interesting about these containers is that what we're doing with them is building seasoning over time, like seasoning your cast iron pot or pan.
Yeah.
So we're building levels of tartrates that accumulate vintage after vintage after vintage. And so in a lot of ways, what we're getting more than an influence from the clay is an influence from prior wines that have been made in the clay. And we can curiously go from red wine to white wine with zero pigment consequence. So we can make Tannat in them and then ferment Riesling in them the next year. And there is no bleaching of pigment.
Wow.
But there is this accumulation of tartrates that are seasoning the containers.
So, like winemakers that really know their cooperages and get to know their barrels, at this point, I'm assuming you have a really good understanding of each of the barrel's performance. Not barrel, sorry.
Vessels.
Clay
Novum,
vessels.
yes.
Novums. How are you going about making your decisions for which juices you're going to put into each vessel each year?
Yeah. So we have really honed in on a set of them for each particular wine.
Yeah.
So we have a set of them that we use for the Pinot Gris. And with this wine in particular, we're using vessels that were kind of the generation one. And we have, for this wine, vessels that are fired over 100-degree spectrum of temperature. So we have containers at the higher end of the spectrum that are very reductive in their nature, and the wines show as they are in more of a closed environment during their élevage. And then at the low end of the temperature spectrum, we have vessels that are much more oxidative, and the wines are more open and broad. And so we've got tools within the toolbox to differentiate. And really what we've done now is develop a system of using vessels for particular wines. However, you can bounce around. We're just looking at building that seasoning and complexity of flavor.
Yeah, I'm always so curious about that thought process going into vessel or barrel selection with certain blocks, or because you know that during the growing season these things are bouncing around in your head and sort of planning them out. So thanks for answering that. All right, Stefan.
Yeah,
I'm all out of questions.
great.
We can
Love
move
it.
on.
So what's new and exciting that we haven't covered? You said something, you briefly touched on spirits, that you now have a spirit maker using your pots.
We do. We have several spirit makers using them, making Nacino, making Arak, which is a Lebanese liqueur that's anise-based. And quite exciting, working on a project that's going to be based out of Oaxaca, Mexico, that involves some corn-based whiskey. And I can't divulge too much.
Okay.
So that's been fun. And then, of course, the last year and a half, we've really also been expanding into brewers' facilities and working with a lot of brewers across the country, making sour farmhouse ales particularly. So that's pretty exciting, moving into some new fermentation worlds. I mentioned a meadery. It's cool to expand beyond Willamette Valley winemaker.
And you said you planted 19 new varieties of white wine. Is that correct?
Yeah, super. So we've got a really exciting series of plantings this spring. We've got 19 whites going in that were, the idea kind of came from an Edelswicker style Alsatian German white wine that we've been making with 9 different Alsatian German, some hybrid varietals, co-planted, co-fermented, and it ballooned a little bit from there.
Yeah.
So we have 19 whites, including some material that's pretty cool. Flora, Simeon
So
Rose.
are these varietals? I'm curious. Are they varietals that ripen roughly the same time, or are you going to have to pick them at different times, or is it?
So we're hedging our bets on a warming climate. And,
Yeah.
I think you're hedging correctly.
So we're really thinking about varietals that are going to be hard to ripen when we've got these summers that are just perpetually hotter. So we've got those 19 whites, a lot of which will ripen late. We also have some reds, Italian stuff that's pretty obscure, high alpine, Schiapartino, Nebbiolo, Montuni, Albana.
And are you going to bottle those separately, or are you going to do blends, or both?
Most of it we will bottle as varietal specific.
Wow.
Yeah,
Good God.
we've got a 3-acre planting of Gamay that will go in next week.
Awesome.
Yeah, so really trying
Gamay
to
all day. Yeah.
trying to differentiate and grow stuff that we like to drink, vinify, and drink and consume, and stuff that makes us happy.
Yeah. If the world goes to shit, well, at least you got a ton of wine to drink
Right.
and watch the fireworks. All right. Thank you. It was lovely. And so for our art leaning, inspired, whatever guests, this is one of the places I like to take them. So if they're already interested, or already have an interest in ceramics or whatnot. But what we're going to talk about now is there are a few places around the valley where you can visit and either get a purely art experience, like a gallery or something, or you can get a little combo. Like here at Beckham, you get a little bit of wine, but you also have a little something else. Because maybe there's somebody in your group that, isn't as into wine, but they are super into art. So you get kind of a little experience where you get both. So, couple places, obviously, Beckham Estate. Trisadum is one of the ones that we really like. Go up there. James is a wonderful artist. Would you call that abstract art? I'm not sure exactly. Yeah. And he uses the grape skins to create textures and big pieces he does as well. And the gallery is right there in the tasting room.
That mixed medium, those art pieces, beautiful.
It's a cool spot. I definitely recommend. And then you could buy the stuff off the walls.
Yeah. And their aged dry Riesling is pretty dang good.
I like their wine in general. That's very solid, and they're doing more sparkling stuff now.
Yeah.
I think even like a sparkling flight, if you the right day, the right time of year.
Ask the right person.
Yeah, there you
The
go.
answer's always no unless you ask.
Right.
That's a good
And
point.
sometimes it's still no, but ask.
3 galleries in the area. Our Elements, Blue Trout, which are both in downtown Newburgh, and then Lawrence Gallery in McMinnville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Outside McMinnville, head towards Sheridan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Our
They
Elements
had the
has
Dolly exhibit.
a bunch of different people's art in there, including
Yeah.
Mark Terry, who drives for us.
Shout out to Mark.
They have rotating exhibits. Lawrence
Art-
Gallery had Dolly for a long time. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's still out there right now. And then
Yeah,
Blue
I don't-
Trout is
Now they have
very-
Dali prints.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
A little different, but
I think they have some pretty exclusive stuff out there.
Yeah.
Way back when I had my work at the Lawrence Gallery.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Tell us more then, please. I mean,
we're speaking out
we're
our ass
total
here.
donkeys.
This is,
When it comes to art, we're donkeys. I had to text Mark to get some recommendations on here. So you're the expert. So
Well, it was many moon ago, but I did used to show at the Lawrence Gallery. They used to have a location in Portland as well.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the bigger scale vessels that I was making went to people's lofts in the early 2000s when all that construction was happening and economy was booming. Things were good.
Right.
there we go. The .com was wrapping it up. People had money to burn.
Mark Terry also has stuff at George Fox.
George Fox, they have a couple different, what do you call them? They're shows.
I mean, they have their
put in-
shows.
Yeah,
and then they
shows.
have pieces from students and professors
Yeah,
throughout the.
so during COVID, I think it's a little bit limited,
Yeah.
but in the non-COVID times, you can
Yeah.
maybe inquire with the arts department and get a tour or whatever. And
When life got too loud, I used to just take my headphones and go sit in George Fox's art gallery
yeah,
and just kind of meditate for 20 minutes at a time. It was the only place it was quiet.
yeah. Do they have a gallery besides Bauman, or
yeah.
is it?
Yeah. There's one in, is it the Hoover Building? It's the Hoover Building.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Ian doesn't know.
Anyway.
He doesn't care. Other ones.
Salem Cultural Center.
Right.
That's where my
Very
wedding
cool.
reception was.
Oh.
We danced in the middle of an
Works of
art
art
display.
in a work of art.
yeah
Oh.
Gallery of Anyway,
something.
that doesn't really work.
I was
Anyway, yes, lots
Dad
of stuff running through there. Salem Cultural Center. They also have programs for like doing painting classes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Might be able to hook you up with a little painting class or something if you come.
Are you
I know-
suggesting I need a painting class?
Yeah, I've seen your painting and it looks
It's
like
not good.
dog shit.
I try.
What else?
Potter's
Okay.
Vineyard.
Potter's Vineyard.
Yes.
Potter's Vineyard.
Yeah, tell us
Former
about that.
Volkman Vineyard.
Okay.
Yeah, the Sanchez family, they are amazing potters. They have a studio up there in a gallery that I think is attached to the tasting room.
Very cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can honestly
Arbor
say I've never-
Brook used to have a little gallery too. I don't know if they still do. It's been a while since I've been in there.
I need to go visit Potter's.
Yeah.
I can't say that I've been there in the last
Yeah.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah. How's the wine? I've never had it.
They're good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How's the wine? Tell me. It's on camera. And then a couple other spots that Mark told me about. Currents, which is a co-op in McMinnville. So if you're staying out there, check that out if you're in the wine scene. And then Fire's Eye, which is another ceramicist, I believe, in McMinnville. So a couple other places over there that you can check out if you want to do the art thing. Anyway, anything to add, Andrew, before we move on?
Said that so flippantly.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a lot of opportunities for people.
There
to
you
explore
go.
Right, there.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, if you want a little bit. Okay. Sports Minute. Did you guys watch any NCAA? I didn't watch the finals.
Yeah.
Was
Gonzaga
last night?
got their ass
I didn't watch the
kicked.
finals. I watched the semifinals, which was amazing. Gonzaga won.
When's
Overtime.
It was overtime. Was it about to go in overtime? Or was the first overtime? I think it was the first overtime. Yeah,
Apparently we
dude
watched
hit
it
like
very
a
closely.
game-winning shot with 3 seconds to
I had
go.
Gonzaga winning my bracket, and
Oh,
there went my chance to win $100 off my friends. So, anyway,
just to get the win, it's $100.
I mean, I would have won the bracket if they'd won, but it's fine. Baylor won. Sports betting for you.
Well, it's beautiful to see OSU go deep,
I mean, the Pac-12 had 4 teams all the way up to the.
and to see a
Sweet
team that
16.
was like picked to get last in their conference tournament and go to the Elite Eight.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
like
that was fun. That's that March
what people
Madness
watch
we
for.
missed out on last year.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's that
sure.
little, and with college sports, you get kids that are there playing for pride and really, really want it. It's entertaining.
I think that's a bullshit statement. Actually, I believe pro athletes have a lot of pride and they're like playing for their life. And paycheck.
2 words.
you.
Ocho
Well-
Cinco.
Yeah, watch Ocho Cinco in practice. He practices a lot harder than an NCAA wide receiver. I'll put it that way.
Allen Iverson?
Okay, all right. That's
He
a hot
didn't
take.
take-
10,000%.
Iverson didn't practice. That was fine.
I mean, you guys.
I'd
you
still,
guys- we
I'd
talking
still
about
pick him for my team.
practice.
I can't
Well, we talk
practice
about
is a
practice.
statement.
We're not talking about a game.
I'm sure NCAA
We're not
players
talking
would
about a
hate to
game.
get paid too. They would stop having all that
Oh, they would
passion if they
love
got
to
paid.
get paid.
I'm talking about practice.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right. I am thankful that Newburgh CPRD brought soccer back for the spring for the little guys. And Zanabu
Nabu's
is
not a
getting
little guy. He's
another.
like a grown folk.
Yeah, for your full-grown man who's 12.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. But
Is he playing with shoes this year, or
yeah, that's right. No, yeah. Thankfully, he still fits in his shoes from the fall. They did a little season in the fall, but this is
Zanabu? It can be 28 degrees and snowing outside, and this kid's in shorts and no shoes.
Yeah, perfect.
Just living his life.
Internal heater.
loves
Yeah.
it. Yeah, exactly. So it's great. He needs to run around.
Get the
'cause
wiggles out.
He loves the Minecraft and all that computer shit, and which is fine, whatever. But shut up, Ian. But he's got to get outside. You got to go enjoy. The weather's beautiful, and if we didn't he wouldn't go out. He'd be happy to just.
During the summer, though, I know he's always outside because come like 6 o'clock every single night, I just hear you come to the door and go, Zanabu! booming through the neighborhood. And like 3 minutes later, it just comes pitter-pattering back by.
I love living in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful thing. I used to have a triangle for like a dinner, but
Yeah, I
it's more
know.
fun just
Yeah,
yelling.
well,
And I'm just gonna say Phillies are 4-0. So I'm
Cool.
pretty sure World Series championship.
Yeah.
I watched the Mets. The Mets. The Phillies had played 3 games before the Mets had their opener, and it was away too. It was so bizarre. Baseball scheduling.
So weird.
Anyway, DeGrom pitched like 7 amazing innings and just blew them all away. They bring in the bullpen, and the Phillies go and take the win. It was amazing, like 5-3.
Wow.
Go Phils! So excited. All right, that's it for the Sports Minute. I know baseball. No one cares.
Baseball's
but me.
so hot right now.
We need to start a wiffle ball league though in the neighborhood.
We need to have a catch.
I've got my glove. You let me know.
Actually, Wesley, when I go back to Pennsylvania with my buddies, we play wiffle ball. So we need to practice.
I mean, I'll give you a warm-up.
Yeah, I need.
All right.
Thank you. And we need to have like a real catch too, like with a real ball.
I've got
'Cause
bucket of balls.
That feeling of catching a ball in your mitt and just hucking it. Oh, it's just a good feeling.
We just have to make sure we warm up. We're old now.
Oh,
Like the shoulders
Yeah, and,
don't.
like,
no,
we
we
know
need to
that we
set a
used to do.
timer. Set a timer like 15 minutes. That's
It's the
it.
cutoff.
No more than 15
Because
minutes.
we're both going to be the
just be
guys
like,
that will just keep throwing it, like waiting for the other guy to quit.
Go further. I think I can make it. And just
Just for the next 2 days.
One
Like
of those, I'm over 30
My
moments.
COVID shot was nothing. This is
Yeah.
Oh,
actually a dead arm.
could be
Brutal and
bad.
beautiful. Let's get into it.
What's been brutal? Somebody wrote in
Yeah, you're
on
up,
the notes.
Well, there was just there was an article in I think Decanter magazine that was talking about how Europe's seeing consecutively now the worst droughts it's seen in 2,000 years. So I was just thinking that's a scary thought and scary time. I mean, for people that grow grapes here, and obviously you were said earlier you're banking on the globe heating up, but it sounds like you're right.
We can't
Based
compete
on
with
evidence.
the fires, though. You
No.
know,
No.
I mean,
what
True.
do you do then?
what do you do?
Yeah.
Vintage variation. Hey.
No, that's not a variation we like.
But yeah, I just think it's water. Something we take for granted so much here in Oregon because we have such an abundance of it, and we don't have what California has, and we always think like, oh yeah, California has these
Right.
drought, but we actually have, plenty of water issues in the future, and something just to consider: watering your lawn or however other ways people waste water is things to think about.
Yeah, be
Yeah,
thankful.
when it's been tough watching, especially parts of France, the last couple of vintages with late hails, hard frosts,
Just more extreme weather.
and really, just really hoping for our old world friends that they actually can get through the spring kind of unscathed
I
this
think
year.
we all could use a good year
Yeah,
in many
Yeah.
ways
I
this year.
no doubt.
Beautiful. Let's move
Oh,
on to
things
that.
are on the uptick as far as bookings go for tour companies,
Yeah, baby.
for Renegade.
Restaurants.
Restaurants are seeing, record weekends, even in comparative years.
Yeah.
2018, 2019. Folks are ready to get back out.
Chomping at the bit.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
wanting the niceties, the little things that we took for granted for so long. I think a year. I'm really hoping, and I've said this throughout the whole last year, that I hope the thing we take away is gratitude and kindness and taking care of our neighbors. In a lot of ways, we had to this last year. We had to look out for each other. There's a lot of stuff that we missed out on. And so when we do get to go back out, actually like being in the moment and enjoying this beautiful bite that a chef created for you, instead of it being like, yeah, I've gone out to eat 3 times this week and it's just another bit of food. But it's like I'm at a table with some friends and I get to share their company. We're opening a special bottle and I'm glad your health is okay. So I really hope that that's what we take away. And it's not just sort of we're over it. Like, let's get back to because in a lot of ways, some of the things that were before weren't necessarily all good. Like us all making money and having a decent living was very nice and good, right? Like,
Yeah,
but
kids going to school is pretty good, but
the the portions that we took for granted, I'm really hoping that we kind of maintain this awe and wonder that we're seeing right now.
yeah, excess is the scourge of our generation. Not our generation, but this time. And I think it's taught us a little bit about that because we've had to. It's like you don't know what you got till it's gone, which I never thought I'd think about restaurants, but you do when you're not able to actually go to
It's
one.
still
and-
the same with
Right.
toilet paper for me.
Yeah.
I think about a year ago this time, every time I wipe my butt, it's like,
yeah.
I got a whole pack.
Or we were
Sitting
able to
in
do
the-
this episode without masks because fully vaccinated, mostly vaccinated,
Mostly
fully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
yay.
And maybe we'll be able to make a trip somewhere in the near future. Oh my
Heck
god,
yeah.
we have not traveled.
Oh, I want to travel
all.
so bad too.
Yeah,
We're that's happening for some
brings
of
us to our next beautiful. Thanks for that,
was a perfect
segue
segue.
there, Andrew.
You're hired if you want to be part of the crew. Well, glad
Yeah,
if you need another
please,
project.
you can be our we're going to New York.
We're going to New York.
At least Wesley, Ian, and I are going. We're
Mm-hmm.
still working on Cole. I could sell. I bet I have some old bikes. I could probably sell.
I'm
to
guessing
pay.
this isn't a money issue.
I'm gonna figure. No,
This is a prior
I'm
engagement
looking for
issue.
solutions.
I know.
I'm looking
I gotta
for
look out
solutions.
for my boy on camera.
We'll work
I'm
it
not
out.
gonna.
We're
throw
gonna
him
work it
under
out
the-
in the next 3 minutes on camera.
I know, but anyway, we're gonna go to New York. We're gonna eat some good food. We're gonna celebrate me
You're getting old.
turning 40. And oh man, not
We'll just
too
call
long.
it my belated 30th.
23 days.
Because
Yeah.
I didn't really get a party,
Yes.
so it's a 30-40.
There you go.
Bam.
Collectively, we're
30,
turning
40.
70.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we're gonna eat our way through New York for a couple days, and hopefully bring you guys some content. So, but if there's anywhere you feel like we have to go in New York, shoot us a line.
And if you have any hookups or
What?
places you can get us into,
Like
you know, a
free
bouncer
lodging?
somewhere, you
free
know,
lodging, like can
whatever,
I crash on your floor?
you just
Yeah, we'll
you
take
hit us
that.
up.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I mean, I'm still
Shameless
very,
as
very
always.
broke after
No,
last
it's-
year. There's,
I don't judge you, bro.
I'll take
with
anything
you.
I can get.
Yep.
We'll trade wine.
I'm stoked. We're gonna see a little bit of Brooklyn, and maybe a food tour. Definitely some, lots of food. Period. I want a cabaret, like a musical theater cabaret. You guys don't have to go to that if you don't want. I'll go.
I mean,
by myself.
I've
if I
never
have
been to one. So
And
no.
comedy. I want to go to a comedy club, either stand up or sketch comedy, because I love those. Those are fun. And as like now I'm 40, my kids are a little older. I can like go out and do more things. I want to do more comedy clubs because they're a riot.
Sounds good to me. I'm
so
gonna
yeah.
land by a fifth and put it in my backpack so I can drink on the cheap for the whole trip.
Let's go.
I'll
We're gonna stay up till like.
I'll bring a half case of wine for the
11:30
trip,
now.
but we can 11:30.
Super late. Exactly.
Oh.
11:30, maybe 11:35.
Easter was beautiful. It was just beautiful to be. It was a beautiful
Wonderful.
day. It was beautiful to be with family and a little bit less stringent than
All the old
Christmas
people
and
were
all other
vaccinated.
holidays. So yeah, it was just a beautiful, beautiful time.
You got some good
Nice
pictures.
weekend. Got some. Yes,
The
got
kids
some great
ran
pictures
around
of
and got
fam.
eggs.
Yeah.
I had Easter with my family.
They didn't let
yeah.
me participate in the Easter egg hunt, but I thought I was going to dominate.
You threw hobos last year.
I was gonna, yeah. I
Or
just
2 years
I
ago.
got like all the
Locked
eggs
in.
last year, and it was like whatever, guys. So, but, no, it was really fun. It was nice just to be with family. I love being with family.
And one more.
Who else? It
Our
wasn't me that put it on there.
there was another Reddit find. Decanter Magazine had a little article about how canned wine is just sort of on the rise as far as perception. Like when it first came out, it was like, who puts wine in a can? And as we were making a canned wine, it was nice to see that the perception has changed, and then also like the quality of wine that's being put into cans is a lot higher, and but not to age. They specifically said that. They asked about quality and just said you never would want to put one of these away in your cellar. This isn't the best
I
wine
am
this
for
winery
nostalgia's
makes.
sake.
But
I'm
for a
gonna sign
picnic,
can and it's putting it away.
That'd be an
Yeah.
interesting exercise to read about, though. Like, how is a canned wine age?
not well,
You know?
apparently.
No,
According to the short-term research that's been done on
Yeah,
it.
I want to know.
we've got a can
But yeah,
with a
just
velvet enclosure.
Convenience wise, and like just it's so nice to take to like a
Doesn't
picnic
breathe
or
at
whatever.
all.
So buy all our wine when we release it.
That's the point.
Well, it's also accessible to a lot of people that wine traditionally hasn't been accessible to.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, it's really cool to see higher quality wine going into cans that are available to folks that maybe aren't going to drink an entire bottle of wine in an evening or don't have the disposable income
See,
to spend.
I also look at it as single service
right.
or single serving.
That's exactly what
That's
I'm getting
what-
at. Like you can get. Oh my God! I talked
this
with
guy
my
off.
hands.
Cut them off.
Yeah, you can get one can of a sparkling
Right.
wine as
Yep.
a single parent, maybe not being able to kill an entire bottle of bubbles by
Oh,
yourself,
not a good idea.
Right.
and just have your moment with your show or your book.
Pour
and
that can of wine into a glass, and it's classy.
Yeah.
let's cover
No
this.
one
So-
will ever know
yeah.
it was in a can to start with.
Yeah.
Take your butter and
There we
just
go.
let it decant.
Yeah, there
in
you
the
go.
glass.
So, all right.
I got excited.
Andrew, anything beautiful and brutal to add?
Oh, I mean, after that ice storm, I don't know. It just feels good that spring has sprung.
Yeah.
And we're out of the
Yes.
depths
Amen.
of winter.
Yeah.
We had no power here for 10 days.
Oh my
11
God.
days. No internet for 18. We couldn't even get off the hill for
That
3 or 4 days.
Like
The
the
roads were
dark
closed.
ages.
Yeah.
Did you like
So-
read a book or something? What do you do with no internet?
Well, this was classic. We have a crank generator to charge cell phones.
Oh,
and
yeah,
my
good.
daughters, the first thing they had to do was get this thing out and start charging their phones. Well, they plugged in and started cranking away. And little did they know, the machine was taking juice out of their batteries. So they lost the 30% that they had to the machine.
Oh, that is brutal. That's the perfect brutal.
Yeah, they
so
were really
amazing.
in a place.
Wow. That's like
There
a
was
major
gnashing of
pinch for a teenager.
Oh my
right.
gosh.
A young person with a
Did
phone
you have a
in
hard
general.
time not laughing?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
But in all reality, it does feel just fantastic to be out of what was like a pretty challenging winter. It just seemed like 2020 was going on into 2021, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
so I'm glad though. Everything's so beautiful now, and the bluebirds are out.
I know. I looked at the weather report and it had like 70s, like 8 days out or something like that. I'm like, are you? Yes. Give me
Our
70s.
morning walks with Malcolm are just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And we're walking by blossoms and seeing new growth on trees. And Malcolm's favorite things are leaves on trees. Like he will literally
So
point
cute.
at every tree we walk by.
He's going to be a botanist.
Yeah.
not as good as a human by any means, but we did get a puppy this spring that's been kind of
Hey,
fun.
that's
We got a French bulldog.
Oh, they're
two
so
great
cute.
Pyrenees, so-
We have two Pyrenees. We lost our Mastiff a couple years ago and
Oh.
took a year off without a pup, and now we've got a trip hazard.
Yeah. Lapdog.
We went from a little
bowling
big
ball.
monster to a
They're so cute.
like
and
a
probably
loaf of bread
thinks
walking
ready
around.
to take
Yeah.
out your ankles at all times.
and ready to fight anything, even though there's no way it would win. Just like think they're so tough,
So get your
Little man syndrome to the max.
get your Achilles heel. Watch out.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrew, for having us at
that was
your
fun.
beautiful
Thank you.
winery.
Thanks for entertaining all my nerdy questions.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
could geek out forever.
was
Yeah,
fun.
exactly. We keep the
Maybe-
camera rolling and keep going.
One of these days.
Anyone wants to come talk more, I'm always game.
We will,
take
man.
notes,
We
take
would love
notes.
to.
All right. If you enjoyed this content, please like, follow, subscribe, and share with your many friends just how wonderful that Hosbrutality podcast is. And we will see you next week.
You almost forgot the Patreon. Hit the Patreon button,
Oh.
baby. We're going to New York.
Patreon. Donate to Patreon, and then Cole will go.
There you go.
There we go. If we get one Patreon, something. All right. We'll see you next week.